Hi, this is Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextral Gunfighter. You know, I've had this rifle here for years and have not really done a review. I did a little bit with it on the Appleseed Prep video series. I'll have a link down below to that. It's one of my first series I ever did, and it's kind of, well, I think it's an important series and has lots of great information. The production quality is pretty lame by current standards for me anyway. But this is a kind of a review of or advocacy for the Ruger 1022. Now this is the Collector Series 2nd edition. Now this design, this layout of this particular 1022 was, there was a contest some years ago by Ruger to come up with a design for a 1022 rifle. And a Project Appleseed instructor, I believe out of Michigan, submitted the features that he thought the rifle should have, and Ruger pretty much adopted his suggestion. He was the winner that year for that contest. And so this is what you might call a Liberty Training Rifle, or LTR, and it's a near perfect Project Appleseed rifle. Now it is also great for small game hunting. I've used it for taking snowshoe hare here in Wyoming. In fact, it's excellent meat, by the way. It's more of a red meat than typical rabbit. But and it would also make a great SHTF Z-Day rifle. I mean, especially for Z-Day, you know, the headshots and accuracy and quiet, you wouldn't draw with the zombies to you and all that kind of stuff. So a great versatile rifle from Project Appleseed to shit hits a fan. Now this has there's some other potential competitors to compare this to, especially from the Project Appleseed perspective. And one would be like the Tippmann M422, which is an AR patterned rifle, an excellent rifle. In fact, they even make a Project Appleseed labeled version of that. There is the Smith & Wesson M&P 15-22 Sport, which is actually a fine rifle, but it is not allowed for use at Project Appleseed events. There was some years ago, one of the rifles had one of the pins. Is actually at the event that I was an instructor at. One of the pins backed out, and the rifle went into kind of I guess you'd call binary trigger mode. So basically, you'd pull the trigger and it'd fire, and release the trigger and it'd fire. And then we had another instance where kind of the same thing happened, and it went basically full auto. Now, I don't know if Smith & Wesson ever actually acknowledged the problem. I'm sure it's been fixed. So I'm sure the current rifles are fine, but they've never really officially acknowledged that there was a problem and, kind of submitted, hey, we fixed it, and submitted to Appleseed. In fact, I offered to test and advocate for the M&P, but never heard back from Smith & Wesson. So anyway, I can kind of consider the M&P 1522 Sport a bit of a discredited rifle, and so if you want to do Project Appleseed, you're just going to have to stay away from that one until that whole political situation gets ironed out. Now another one is the Kel-Tec SU-22, which I've had years ago. If you get one of those and it functions well, then it's a great little rifle to take to a Project Appleseed. Mine unfortunately did not do well, and I ended up, after making several trips to the Kel-Tec factory for repair, finally just gave up on it and sold it. But anyway, this is a terrific rifle, and like I said, a great rifle for doing Project Appleseed. And the course of fire, just so you know, at a Project Appleseed is similar to this. This is kind of a sample target here, where you're going to do standing offhand at simulating. This is all done at typically 25 meters, and so standing offhand, simulating 100 yards. Sitting, simulating 200 yards. and then rapid fire prone, simulating 300 yards. And then slow fire prone, simulating 400 yards, all shot, like I said, at 25 meters. And if you can get the score, the rifleman score on that, then you'll be awarded a patch like that. And you know, to have a lot of pride about it. And then if you go to a known distance event where you typically use a center fire rifle, you'll shoot the full range distance, actual 100, 200, 300, 400 yards, and you can get the long range or known distance patch. And then of course you can go through their instructor program like I did, and it's very rewarding. But anyway, back to the Ruger 1022. Now we'll go over some of the features why I think this is better than your standard typical 1022. One, it has the modular stock, meaning that this black portion can be swapped out for different there's a shorter version, so for a different length of pull, and then it comes stock with the comb that's basically flush here with the gray part of the stock. This has the regular length version with the elevated comb to get you up to where your eye, when you do the turkey neck cheek weld, and you're right up in behind the optic, and you got a good cheek weld here to get you that elevation you need to see through an optic. Now if you're not using an optic and you're using the stock sights, you could stick with the flush comb. And speaking of sights, it has a nice ghost ring sight on the rear that is adjustable for elevation and windage, and then a bladed and then protected front sight up out on the front. So those are kind of good iron sights for Appleseed. Now this rear sight that came with it has this one single screw holding it in place. And I actually, the screw that came on my rifle was actually a little bit too short. It was only getting about a bite on about 2 threads, and it ended up pulling out. And so I had to basically find the same screw size but longer, which went in a little bit into the receiver, but not enough to get in the way of the bolt, and use that to mount the rear sight. Now I don't really use the rear sight because I'm running this optic on it, but if you were running iron sights, you may want to check that and make sure it doesn't have such a short bolt that it's going to pull those threads out. Another option would be to get the Tech sights, which are excellent for any Ruger 1022, the iron sights by Tech sights, and like the ones that I installed on my Keltec SU-16. Those are terrific sights for Project Appleseed, highly recommended. Now, for my sighting system on this rifle, it has an old Simmons 4-power rimfire scope on it, which was like just a super cheap scope, and but it has been amazingly awesome. I really didn't expect it to last this long. It's been many years and lots of hard use, and it's done well. Now you notice it looks odd, but I've got the scope with both mounts behind the turret. And the reason is that while one of the features of the Collector Series is that it has this extended Picatinny rail, it needs to extend about another probably 4 notches out here to get this scope far enough forward so that when you do Project Appleseed turkey neck cheek weld and you're up right in behind that optic, as far forward as you can get your neck, that scope needs to be far enough forward so you can get a full field of view. Now you'll see a lot of people that'll run their scopes way back here where the eyepiece is almost this far back, and you're basically reverse turkey necking, you know, like that, to get a view through it. And it's just unbelievably horrible. We see that a lot at Project Appleseed rifle marksmanship clinics. People show up with their scopes mounted way back, and once they find out that, hey, moving that scope way forward kind of really helps a lot in accuracy, they never go back. So anyway, that's why I've got both these mounts, you know, positioned behind the turret so I can get the scope far enough forward. Could maybe get a cantilever mount, but it's kind of hard to find one that gets it mounted low enough to where, you know, this is the highest comb I can get for this, and to get the right eye level with the scope, that scope has to be mounted pretty low on that. Now you could get, you know, maybe some foam or something and raise this up higher if you wanted to run higher mounts on it, but I like low mounts myself. It keeps up the overall size of the rifle, so it fits in a backpack scabbard a lot better as well too. Now this does have a, it has an 18.5-inch barrel. This must be a really tough barrel, because one day my son and I were out shooting, practicing AQTs with this, and then all of a sudden we were using Browning, I think it's a BPR ammo, and it was the first time we bought a box of that. Well, when I first opened up the box, I actually happened to notice that one of the rounds had the bullet in it, and the cartridge was only half a bullet. It was like it wasn't properly formed, and it only had half a bullet in there. I didn't think nothing of it. I just chucked it, and we went ahead and we were like shooting and, you know, not really paying attention, loading rounds and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, while Brian was shooting, all his shots started hitting like 6 feet off to the right from the point of aim. And we kept looking and we're like, God, what is wrong? You know, we thought, well, maybe the scope has come loose, or maybe the scope finally broke, you know, cheap scope, or something else. Maybe the stock was loose, whatever. We kept looking for things and kept trying, and it kept shooting way off to the right. And finally, we pulled it apart and looked down the barrel and saw that there was a partial obstruction in the barrel. And apparently, my guess is that one of those Browning half bullets had fired into the barrel, gotten stuck in there, and then all the other bullets had apparently managed to smash their way past, and of course it affected their, you know, probably tore them up a bit, and they go flying off to the right. So we cleaned it all out, got it, checked it as best we could tell. Visually we could see no damage outside of the barrel and nothing that we could see inside. So, and it's shot well ever since then, ever since we corrected it, and it's been fine. So tough barrels, I'm guessing they must be hammer forged barrels, so you can take some abuse. They can take a partial squib anyway. Now one of the cool things about the 1022, and here I've repurposed my Springfield Armory Hellcat, the little pouch here, to hold magazines for the 1022. They have these little rotary magazines. So these little 10-round magazines. This is a clear one, which I really like, and they just fit in just like that, and they sit in there kind of flush. So I like that. It makes them a little bit harder to get them to drop out. If you can get them to drop free, usually you can push that lever forward and they'll drop out on their own. If not, you can sand the stock a little bit, maybe lube these up, clean these up and lube them a little bit. But anyway, it gives you so that you've got your hand placement can be positioned right underneath the magazine without any interference from the magazine. Now, of course, you can get the longer 25-round magazines, which do stick out like a little bit like a banana clip, and that gives you something to get a hold of and yank them out. So there's the advantage of being able to yank them out easy. I like the 10-rounders so I can get my hand right up in there and get close, good support for it. Now, the way the bolt works on the 1022 is to lock it back. As you pull the boat back, you push this little lever underneath the bottom, release the bolt, and then release that little lever underneath the bottom. And then to release the bolt, you pull the boat back, push and release that lever on the bottom, and then release your bolt. Now that's kind of it's a little bit awkward, it's counterintuitive in some ways. It feels like it's not consistent. So you can put an auto boat release in these, and locking the boat back works the same. So there I've got the boat locked back, but now because this rifle has an auto boat release, I can pull the charging handle back, release it, and then it will drop. And I don't have to touch the little button on the bottom, the boat lock hold open button there on the bottom to release it. Just have to use it to lock it back. But for releasing it, pull and release, and you're good to go. So that does make things a lot easier, I think, for Project Appleseed. You're dealing with enough and you feel a little bit stressed when you're doing the timed events in Project Appleseed. So, things like that, just to kind of smooth things out and make things a little bit easier for you, less stressful, I think it's worth it. And the auto boat release is only like 10 or 12 bucks. Valkortsen makes them. I'll include a link down in the description. And so that's one of the improvements I like to do to a 1022. Now this is the stock trigger, and let's go over the parts in the stock trigger. It's the stock trigger from a 1022. This is the ejector. I'm just going to slide it over here, move it out of the way. And what we can see here is, okay, I'm going to push this button here for what you push to lock the boat back. And if you watch, this plate here will move up. And if the boat was to come and press against it, it will shift it over. Now, get a closer look there. Let's do that again. If I push this button to lock the boat back, watch this little heart-shaped cutout there. This little heart-shaped cutout right in there. So I push the button, the boat comes forward, gives a little bit of a push, and it settles into that other lobe of the heart shape. Now the bolt cannot move forward. So if you pull the boat back and release it, it's going to stay on that. And that's why when you want to release the boat, you have to pull the boat back, come down here and push this lever there, which will lift that boat release up. And it will come down, and now the boat can move forward. Now the auto bolt release, basically what it's doing is it's eliminating that, if you can see that heart shape, the dip in the heart, it's basically eliminating that. And there's some people that will show you on the internet how you can actually take a grinder and just, cut that away and get yourself your own automatic bolt release. I just figure if you're going to tear down the trigger, you might as well just get one from Valkortsen. It's only like 10-12 bucks. Now it is a bit of something of a task to install. You have to remove 2 pins, this pin here and this pin here. This pin will remove the ejector, and there's a little spring that comes off the trigger there that presses against it. That spring is supposed to help hold that pin in place. So that'll come out, that spring's going to come loose. It's going to pop up. And then there's another spring on down in there. And that the bottom of the bolt release lever tags into. And so you're removing these 2 pins. It is a bit of a, requires some finesse. There's 2 springs to deal with, but it is, with some focus, it is possible to accomplish. Or you can order the complete trigger group from Valkortsen that will have the auto bolt release included in it if you request that. But you can get the BX trigger from Ruger for like 60 to 80 bucks. Add the Valkortsen auto bolt release, and you have a really nice setup. Stock trigger is okay, but the BX trigger by Ruger, which is an upgraded trigger, or you can get, Timney and Valcourtson both also make triggers for it, but the BX trigger is really affordable from Ruger, and it's pretty damn good. And it's got a terrific, nice, easy let off, very crisp brake, and then a nice, distinct reset. Perfect, very nice, and for like 60, 70, 80 bucks, it's well worth upgrading, I think, a 1022 with that trigger. Or if you got the bucks, go with the Valcourtson or Timney. Now I like, for Project Appleseed, I like to have myself, I've got like 10 of these 10 round magazines in my little folder here, but for Project Appleseed, if you have at least, say, 6, so I like to have 4 black and 2 clear, and the reason is, and that way I can have everything loaded up for a complete AQT, or the Appleseed qualification test, which is basically kind of a bigger version of this. And so I can set up for the 10 rounds that you have in one single magazine for the offhand 100 yards course of fire. I can have a magazine ready for that. For the sitting, standing to sitting, where you have a 55 seconds and you've got a magazine, one with 2 rounds, I do that with the clear, one with 8 rounds, I do that with the black. That is nice to have the magazines that you can distinguish 8 rounds versus 2. And then again for the rapid fire prone, where you have 65 seconds for 10 rounds, but with 2 in one magazine and 8 in the other, again, 2 different distinct magazines, so I can identify which has 8 and which has 2. And then for the final 400 yard round, you have 1 magazine with 10. So that's why I like to have a total of 6 magazines for Appleseed, but you can do it with just 2. You only absolutely need 2. It just makes things a little bit better if in between each AQT you can load all your magazines, have them all loaded up, so you're not having to try to load them in between these stages. Now another thing I like to have for Project Appleseed is you'll be running a sling, and they will teach you how to use the sling to improve your accuracy, how to use the sling to provide additional support. Now I like to run a quick disconnect on the front, and that allows me to, once I've got the sling looped up on my arm, I can disconnect from the rifle easily. So I use the mag pull quick disconnect sling swivel, and then the mag pull quick disconnect sling mount. And I believe this is an M-lock mount, which I've kind of, ghettoed on there. The stock isn't really made to run a sling mount like this. So it can certainly be done better than I did it. But that's what I like to run, is that quick disconnects on my sling. And then this is a GI sling, which you can get from Project Appleseed store, or you can get it from Amazon, and I have a link down in the description where you can get one of these from Amazon. You do not want the nylon slings, you want one of these cotton GI slings. It's critical. Believe me, if you use a nylon sling, your weekend at Project Appleseed is going to suck. Get one of these. Don't try to cheap out on that. Now you can, instead of using the quick disconnect, you can use the old school, FUD hunter style sling stud and sling swivel, and I'll include a link for that as well. I'll call it the FUD sling swivel hardware, but that makes it a little more problematic as far as trying to disconnect, or you'll have to basically unloop the sling from your arm every time you want to get yourself away from the rifle. Like I said, this is no longer produced by Ruger, but you can still get and find the Collector's Series 3rd edition, which is called the Man's Best Friend version, which is basically the same thing, but instead of a gray stock, it has I think it's kind of a green stock, but otherwise I believe it's identical. Anyway, this is a terrific rifle. I've probably got must be tens of thousands, if not 100,000 rounds through this. I've earned my first rifleman score with this rifle. I think one of my sons has, and maybe both of them have got their first score with it. And then a lot of other students that when I'm working as an instructor at one of the clinics, a lot of other students have also borrowed my rifle and earned the score. In fact, I wished early on I'd started like marking little, like the kill, like a combat air fighter would do every time he gets a kill, where they paint the little flag of the enemy aircraft shot down. I wish I could had thought to start painting on little tiny rifleman patches on the stock here to indicate how many people have earned their score with this rifle. It's quite a few. And so yeah, a lot of rounds have gone down range with this setup, and everyone just marvels at how much easier it is to get the score with a rifle like this. It's Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextrous Gunfighter. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.